Salvete omnes. This is Review 8, chapters 29 through 32. Exercise B. We are parsing English sentences and translating them into Latin. Prima. Sententia prima. Many beautiful gifts were given to the queen by the citizens of the kingdom. So many is an adjective, multus aon. Beautiful is an adjective, pulcher pulchra pulchrum. And the noun that they are modifying is gifts. Gifts is the subject of the verb were given. Were given is the verb what were given? The gifts. So gifts is the subject. The subject is in the nominative case in Latin. We want the nominative and plural, because gifts is plural, of donum e neuter. That means that the adjective many, multus aon, must be nominative plural neuter, as well as pulcher pulchra pulchrum. So something like multa dona pulchra, or dona multa et pulchra, or multa et pulchra dona. You got options. Options are good. Were given, that's the verb, do, dare, dedi, datus, to give. What were given? The gifts were. They were given, third person plural. They were given, perfect tense, passive voice. They were given, indicative mood. So fourth principal part, datus aum, make it agree with the plural neuter gifts, data, and give it the third person plural present tense of sum helping verb, sunt, data sunt. We'll save that verb for the end like dessert. We're going to give these things to the queen. They're being given to the queen. This is not motion towards. This is not odd plus the accusative of motion, because we're just giving this noun to the queen, to an indirect object, dative indirect object. Queen is regina I feminine, and we want the dative singular indirect object, reginae. By whom? By whom were the gifts given? By the agent, by the personal agent. So we want the preposition a ab, which is used with persons, personal agent, who do the passive voice verb. The citizens are actually the ones who are giving the gifts. But verb is passive. Here's the subject. The gifts were given by whom? By the citizens. A ab plus the ablative of personal agent. We want the ablative of civis, masculine or feminine. You may write C for common. So a civibus. Of the kingdom. Regnum e neuter. Of the kingdom, that's genitive. We want the genitive of possession, because they're the citizens of the kingdom. You could also say it's something like genitive of origin. So the citizens from the kingdom. Altogether, the sentence could read something like, multa dona pulchra, a regni civibus, reginae data sunt. Optime, secunda. Caesar ordered the cavalry to make an attack on the wing of the enemy. So the verb is ordered. Who did the ordering? Caesar did. Yeah boy, he's the subject, nominative. Nominative case of Caesar, Caesaris masculine. Caesar, Caesar. He ordered, we're going to use eubeo, eubere, iussi, iussus. Remember that eubeo, eubere takes a subject accusative in the active voice and an objective infinitive to complete its meaning. So Caesar ordered the subject accusative to do the objective infinitive. So Caesar ordered, third person singular, perfect tense. So iussit, Caesar iussit. Iussit the subject accusative cavalry. Cavalry, that's the plural of eques, equitus masculine, so we want the equites. We want it to be in the accusative because it's the subject accusative of this objective infinitive. So iussit equites, to make an attack. Latin idiom, which is not quite really idiomatic, it literally is impetum facere. Impetum facere, to make an attack, with impetum being the accusative direct object of the verb facere. So just say impetum facere. Or you can say facere impetum. It takes the preposition in plus the accusative of motion of what's getting the attack. So on the in plus we want the accusative singular neuter of cornu us neuter. So it's kind of lame, but it's just cornu. In cornu, and then of the enemy. Notice it's the enemy, not an enemy. An enemy would be singular. The enemy is plural. We want the plural hostis, hostis, masculine, and we want the genitive plural, the wing of the enemy, the wing belonging to the enemy, genitive of possession. So in cornu hostium, or in hostium cornu. Altogether, Caesar equites iusit impetum in hostium cornu facere. Tertia. We decided to remain with our friends in Spain for a few days. Spain is beautiful. So we decided. The verb is decide. You decide to do something. Who decided? We did. First person plural. Perfect tense of constituo, constituere, constitui, constitutus. Constituo takes a complementary infinitive, often to complete its meaning, especially if the verb means to decide. So we decided upon something. So constituimus. Constitui, chop off the I, that's the third principal part, to get the perfect stem, and then add imus. Perfect. We decided. Constituimus, present active infinitive. We want the complementary infinitive of manere, manere, mansi, mansus. So manere. Manere constituimus. We decided to remain. With whom? Of course, with our friends. Cum plus the ablative of accompaniment, along with our friends, alongside our friends. Noster, nostra, nostrum, agreeing with amicus e masculine. So we want the ablative of accompaniment. Cum amicis nostris. Cum amicis nostris. Where are we hanging out? In Spain, where the rain stays mainly on the plain. So Hispania, I, feminine. Spain, we want in plus the ablative. We want the ablative of location. So in Hispania, macron over the second A, the final A. So cum amicis nostris in Hispania for a few days. That's how long we're going to stay in Spain. Just a few days. So duration of time, how long the action of the verb remained lasts, for a few days. So we want the accusative. Few is pauci I a, always plural, a few, to agree with dies a masculine. So the accusative plural of dies a masculine is dies, and pauci I a will be paucos, paucos dies. Altogether, the sentence could read, paucos dies, cum amicis nostris in Hispania manere constituimus. Optime. Quarta. Where are the men who were ordered to work with me in the fields? Taking the day off. So where are the men? This is an interrogative. We're asking a question. Notice the question mark. So interrogative, where? Now you know there are a couple words for where. We're using ubi right now. Ubi, UBI. So ubi. Where are they? Where are they? Now are is the verb. Now what's the subject of are? It's not where. Where is not the subject of are. Ask yourself, who are? Who were ordered to work with me in the fields? Who are they? The men. The men are the subject. So we actually want to put the noun vieri, masculine, nominative plural masculine, because it's the subject. Vieri. Ubi are, third person plural, present of sum esse fui futurus. Sum es est. Sumus estis sunt. Ubi sunt vieri. And who are those guys? I mean, we're asking where are they, but who are they? Ah, they were ordered to work with me in the fields. Here's a relative clause introduced by a relative pronoun. It's an adjectival clause because it's describing the noun the men, describing who they are, giving more information about them. So, relative pronoun who agrees with the antecedent in gender and number. Must agree in gender and number, not necessarily in case. We know that men, nominative plural masculine, vieri. Well, who must be plural masculine, qui, quod, and it must also be the nominative subject. Who were ordered to work with? They were ordered. Who were ordered? They were, the men. So this will also be nominative plural masculine. So qui. Ubi sunt vieri qui were ordered. Ubeo, ubere, iusi, iusus. So they were ordered. Notice it is passive. It is the third person plural, they were ordered, perfect passive indicative. So we want the fourth principal part, iussus make it agree with the men, the qui, so iussi, and then give it the perfect passive helping verb, which is the third plural present of sum esse fui futurus sunt. So sunt, iussi sunt, qui iussi sunt, and eubeo in the active voice, like we saw in sententia secunda, takes an objective subject accusative and objective infinitive to complete its meaning. Caesar ordered the subject accusative to do the objective infinitive. Caesar ordered the cavalry to do something. When eubeo is in the passive, the men who were ordered to work with me, notice we dropped the subject accusative. We no longer have a subject accusative, who were ordered to work. Now we just have a complementary infinitive. So in the passive, eubeo takes a complementary infinitive to complete its meaning. They were ordered to do what? To laboro, laborare, laboravi, laboratus, to work. We want the present active infinitive, laborare, to work. And with whom? With me. Now, you will not see cum me, ablative of accompaniment cum plus the ablative me. You will see me cum. Cum is postpositive, so it's me cum, written as one word. Laborare me cum. Mecum laborare, iussi sunt mecum laborare, and where are we working? In the fields. In plus the ablative of location. The ablative plural of ager, agri, masculine is agris. In agris. So altogether, the sentence could read something like, ubi sunt viri, qui iussi sunt mecum in agris laborare? Quinta. After the arrival of the messenger from the general, our forces waited in camp for the legions. So we start off with a temporal clause, after the arrival of the messenger from the general. So that's just setting up the time when. It's not the main clause. The main clause is, our forces waited in camp for the legions. If we were to eliminate the temporal clause, the sentence would be fine on its own. Our forces waited in camp for the legions. That sentence is a-okay as it is. That's why it's the main clause. If you were to cross out the main clause and just keep the temporal clause, after the arrival of the messenger from the general, but then what happens? Like it's done. Like it's not done. It's incomplete. There's something missing there. This is why this clause, this temporal clause, is dependent. Its survival is dependent upon the main clause. Without the main clause, you can't have this clause. It can't stand on its own. But the main clause can stand just fine without the dependent clause. All right, anyway, we have after. Now after, and it's after a noun. So after the noun, that's post plus the accusative, and the noun arrival will be in the accusative because of the preposition post, after. Arrival, that's the advent. Adventus us masculine, arrival, the advent. So we want adventum, it's a fourth declension. Post adventum, of the messenger, the arrival of the messenger. Messenger is nuntius, nunti masculine, it's the messenger's arrival, so genitive of possession. We could say post nunti adventum, just to make sure that we know that nunti goes with adventum, from the general, and he came from the general. So ablative of separation. We're moving away from that general. Ab plus the ablative of imperator, imperatoris masculine, so imperatore. Post nunti adventum ab imperatore. Make sure you put the B on ab, A-B, because imperatore starts with a vowel. Don't say a imperatore. Ugh, it's bad. Okay, that's the temporal clause. After that happened, our forces waited in camp for the legions. We have our forces, our noster, nostra, nostrum, agreeing with forces, copiae, aurum, feminine, plural. And forces is the subject of the verb waited, so nominative, copiae. And that makes noster, nostra, nostrum, nominative, plural, feminine as well. So nostrae copiae. They waited, third person plural, perfect active indicative of maneo, manere, mansi, mansus. So copiae nostrae manserunt. Where'd they wait? In plus the ablative of location, in camp. Casra, orum, neuter plural, in casris. In casris. And they waited for. Well, let's cross out manea, manere, mansi, mansus. Get rid of manserunt. They waited for the legions. This is a different verb. This is expecto, expectare, expectavi, expectatus. So expecta, patronum. So they waited for the legions. So expectaverunt, the for is part of the verb. That makes it expecto because it takes a direct object. Expecto is a transitive verb. So they waited for the accusative direct object, legio, legionis, feminine. So legiones. Altogether, the sentence could read something like, post nunti adventum ab imperatore. So our forces, nostrae copiae, in casris legiones expectaverunt. Optime, sexta. The first line of the battle ran towards the enemy and attacked them fiercely. So the first line of the battle, that's the first. Now, line of battle is just acies ei feminine. First, we want primus a so prima acies, because acies is feminine. So we want the nominative of it, prima acies. Acies prima. Prima acies, and they ran towards the enemy. Ran towards them. So towards, I'm sorry, let's go with ran. That's our verb, because the first line did the action of the running. It's curro, currere, cucurri, cursus. So they ran. I'm sorry, the first line did. It ran. Third person singular, perfect active indicative. So cucurrit, cucurrit. Prima acies cucurrit, and they ran towards the enemy. So motion towards the enemy, odd. Preposition odd plus the accusative motion towards. Notice it's not towards an enemy, but towards the enemy. Plural, the enemy. So ad hostes. Ad hostes. Hostis, hostis, masculine. Cucurrit ad hostes. Ad hostes cucurrit. And attack them fiercely. Et, conjunction et, and attacked them. So for attack, we want either impetum facere, if you're feeling fancy, or you can just do appugno, appugnare, appugnavi, appugnatus. Et appugnavit, them, refers back to the enemy, accusative, direct object, plural. Eos, of isea id, refers back to them, the antecedent is the enemy. Et appugnavit, eos, and then fiercely, the adverb fiercely describes how they attack, describes the verb. So we want ferox, ferocis, and ferociter, or you could put acer, acris, acre, and the adverb being acriter. Awesome. So we could say for this sentence, prima acies ad hostes cucurrit, et, et acriter eos appugnavit. Septima. The messenger who had carried my letter for 2 miles was killed by a weapon. By Jove. So, who had carried my letter for 2 miles? Well, that is a relative clause describing this messenger, and the main verb is was killed. There we go. Was killed by a weapon. Who was killed by a weapon? Why, the messenger was. Who that guy? He was the guy who was carrying my letter for 2 miles. I don't know. So, messenger, that's the nominative subject. We want the nominative of nuntius, nunti masculine, so nuntius. Then we kick into a relative clause introduced by the relative pronoun who. The antecedent of who is messenger. Messenger is nominative singular masculine. That makes who singular masculine. They have to agree in gender and number, not necessarily in case. But in this case, they are the same. Don't say it. Case. So qui, nominative singular masculine. Nuntius qui, he had carried. Pluperfect tense, third person singular, because he had carried. Of porto, portare, portavi, portatus. So, portaverat. Portaverat. Need carried what? What thing? Well, my letter. So the accusative direct object, meos aom, agreeing with epistula I, feminine. And it's singular, accusative, so meam epistulam. For how far did he carry that letter? For the distance, the accusative of extent of space, 2 miles. Remember that if you want to say miles in Latin, you have to extend this out to the English thousands of paces, with thousands being milia, milium, neuter plural, and paces being the partitive genitive of passus us masculine, so passoum. We want 2 miles, so 2,000s of paces. Duo, duai, duo. We want the accusative. Don't put a preposition for, or even the conjunction nam. Yeah, don't do that stuff. The for tells us in English that this is extent of space. Latin just uses the accusative to tell us that information. So you want duo milia passuum. He was killed by a weapon. All right, so this is the end of the relative clause. Qui meam epistulam duo milia passuum portavarat. Okay, that's the nuntius. What happened to him? He was killed. Oh, shame. Interficio, interficere, interfeci, interfectus. He was killed. Third person singular. Perfect passive indicative. So fourth principal part, interfectus aum, make it interfectus, masculine singular us to agree with the nuntius. And it needs the third singular present tense of sum as the helping verb because it's the perfect passive. Interfectus est. You could even say est interfectus. I mean, what was he killed by? By means of a weapon. By means of a weapon. Ablative of means, the instrument that did the dirty deed, that killed him. By a weapon, we want the ablative of means. Ablative of tellum e neuter. A weapon, singular tello. Altogether, the sentence could say something like, Nuntius, qui meam epistulam duo milia passum portavarat, tello interfectus est. Que lastima. Octava. Within 6 days we shall march through the enemy's territory with great speed. Thank you. So within 6 days. You could also say in 6 days. But if you say within 6 days, then that really screams out ablative of time within which. So this is a span of time within which in the ablative. It's not accusative, it's ablative. Within this time frame, ablative. It's the ablative of time within which. Did I say it's ablative? So 6 is, wait for it, yes, it's sex. Indeclinable adjective. So sex diebus. Diebus, which is the ablative of dies a masculine, because we want the ablative of time within which. Sex diebus. Within the span of time of 6 days, we shall march. We shall march. We is first person plural. And we want the future of, how do you say march? Well, it's going to be an idiom to make a journey, to iter facere. So iter is going to be the direct object of facere. And we're going to conjugate facio, facere, feci, factus to the first person plural future. So we shall make a journey. So faciemus. Iter faciemus. Where are we marching? Where are we going? Through the enemy's territory, through the territory of the enemy, not an enemy, the enemy, plural. So where are we going? We're not going through the enemy, we're going through the territory of the enemy. So enemies, this is going to be genitive of possession, because they possess the territory. Territory is going to be it's going to be the accusative to go with the preposition through. Through, takes the accusative through the accusative territory. Territory is finis, masculine in the plural. So we get fines. So per fines. But we're going to go ahead and throw the enemy in the genitive right in between that, just like English does. So per hostium fines. So iter per hostium fines, a march, a journey through the enemy's territory with great speed. This is not ablative of accompaniment. This is ablative of manner. It describes how we will march. We will march quickly with great speed. Now, it's not just with speed. Cum, and you must use the cum, celeritate, speed, celeritas, celeritatis, feminine, cum celeritate. It's got an adjective modifying it. Great. Great is magnosaon. Must agree with celeritate. So magna, macron over the final a, celeritate. Now it is your decision whether you want to use the cum or not. But you must use the word order adjective cum noun. So magna cum celeritate. You can drop the cum and just say magna celeritate. That's an ablative of manner. So altogether, the sentence could say, Sextiebus iter per hostium fines, magna cum celeritate faciemus, with faciemus being the first person plural future active indicative of facia, facere, feci, factus, to iter facere, to march. Nona. When he left Gaul, the leader said, Men, we have conquered the enemy and freed our allies from fear of attacks. So when he left Gaul, temporal clause, describing when, it's a dependent clause, and it's dependent on the main clause being the leader said. Notice that we're using quotation marks. These are the exact words of the leader. We're quoting him. So we must use the verb inquit for said. We did not use deco. We must use inquit, inquit being the verb we use for quotation marks. So when he left Gaul, so when, ubi. So ubi, when he left Gaul. He left it. You can either to leave, discedo, discedere, discessi, discessus, or excedo, excedere, excessi, excessus. Either one will take a preposition, a, of, or ax, or even de, plus the ablative to show separation. So ubi discessit a, and then the ablative of Gallia, I, feminine, Gaul, so Gallia. So ubi a Gallia discessit, or ubi e, letter E, e Gallia excessit. Or you could even use the verb relinquo, relinquere, reliqui, relictus, but that takes an accusative direct object. It's a transitive verb. So Gallia would have to be direct object, Galliam. So ubi Galliam reliquit. You have some options here. You like options. So when that happened, the dux, the leader, said, dux, ducus, masculine, and we want the nominative dux. He inquit. Now, inquit usually does not come first in the quote. It usually interrupts the quotation. So we'll start by saying we'll have quotation marks. We'll start with the we have conquered, and then we'll have the vocative, the direct address, because that also does not come first. And then we'll have the inquit. So dux, comma, quotation marks. Save the vocative direct address men for later and go to we have conquered. So we want winco, wincere, wiki, victus. We, first person plural. We have done this. Perfect tense, active indicative. So we have conquered. Perfect stem is third principal part, chop off the I. So wiki, get rid of the I, and we have week. And then add est et imus, istus errant. So wikimus. Now we have, we'll go back to the inquit. So dux, quotation marks, wikimus, comma, quotation marks, inquit, comma, quotation marks. Now let's do the vocative plural, men. So we want the vocative of viri masculine. It's just the same as the nominative, so viri, right, viri, and then put another comma. and that's the direct address. All right, now we can go on with the sentence. Whom did we conquer? We conquered the direct object, the enemy. Notice it's not an enemy, it's the enemy. So plural of hostis, hostis masculine. So we want the accusative plural, hostes. Now, we conquered the enemy and we freed. Et, conjunction et, we freed, we set free. Libero, liberare, liberavi, liberatus. So we freed. Perfect tense, liberab, and then imus, liberavimus. So vicimus et liberavimus. Whom did we free? Our allies. Direct object of the verb. Noster, nostra, nostrum, and socios, soci, masculine. We want the accusative plural masculine for both. Nostros socios, or socios nostros. From fear of attacks, we freed our allies. We freed a direct object from fear. This is going to be an ablative of separation. You do not need a preposition here. Fear is an intangible thing. Can't really touch it. So no need to put a preposition. We just want the ablative of timor, timoris masculine. No preposition, so just put timore. Socios nostros timore. Fear of attacks, from fear of attacks. It's the fear towards attacks. We're not freeing our allies from the attack's fear. The attacks don't possess the fear. It's the fear towards the attacks. Attacks is the objective genitive. Objective genitive, great quiz question. Objective genitive of impetus us masculine. So genitive plural impetuum. Impetuum. And then period, quotation marks. So all together, what a great sentence. Here we go. Ubi a Gallia discessit, dux vicimus inquit viri hostes et socios nostros impetuum timore liberavimus. End quotes. Optime and decima. Many of our horses desire grain and water, which we are not able to find tonight. Poor horses. So many of our horses. Many of our horses. So typically we have many out of our horses. We could also say our many horses. So many, multus aum. We want nominative plural masculine because we're talking about the horses. And typically when we have a number, a numeral, or pauci, or multi, we can use the partitive genitive and give our horses as the genitive plural, equorum nostrorum. Or we could say the ablative, use the ablative with de, e or x or de plus the ablative for the partitive idea. So we could say multi equorum nostrorum, or multi de equis nostris, or multi ex equis nostris. Now, either way, many is the subject, and many, they desire grain and water. They desire. So desire is cupio, cupere, cupivi, cupitus. Third person plural, present tense. So present stem is cupi, add the unt, U-N-T, cupiunt. Multi de equis nostris cupiunt. They want, and what do they want? They want the direct objects grain and water. Grain being frumentum e neuter, because it's neuter, its nominative and accusative are the same, so frumentum. Et, and we want the direct object accusative of aqua, I feminine, aquam. We could also, because they're kind of together, like they're kind of close together, a thing, grain and water, we could say frumentum aquamque, or you can just say frumentum et aquam. So this part, multi de equis nostris, frumentum aquamque, or frumentum et aquam cupiunt. Then we have a relative clause. The relative clause is introduced by the relative pronoun. Now, the antecedent of the relative pronoun, we're actually talking about grain and water. Both of them. We have two antecedents, which we are not able to find tonight. So what Latin does, because grain is neuter and water is feminine, that they're different genders, the neuter is actually going to win out here. We're going to say things which we are not able to find tonight. Many of our horses desire grain and water, things which we are not able to find tonight. So we add a things, so plural neuter. Now inside the relative clause, which we are not able to find tonight, the verb, not able, we are the subject, we are not able, which then screams out for a complementary infinitive like to find. And then tonight, that's going to be an ablative of time when. Now, which we, that makes which, the things which, this is the direct object. So we want the accusative plural neuter, quae, known, and then first person plural present of possum, posse, potui is possumus. Pot sumus becomes possumus. Quae possumus, and then we're not able to find tonight, on this night. So to find is a complementary infinitive, invenio, invenire, inveni, inventus. So invenire, the present active infinitive, invenire. We can't find it on this night, tonight. So hic haec hoc, to agree with nox noctis. Nox noctis is feminine, and we want the ablative for both. So hoc nocte, hoc nocte. Altogether, sententia decima could read, multi de equis nostris, fermentum aquam quae cupiunt, quae hoc nocte invenire non possumus, or possumus. Optime, very well done. That wraps it up for Review 8, chapters 29 through 32.